living standards, as it's generally expressed in the media and by economists here in Australia, is real household disposable income per capita. But there's a problem with that because it doesn't take into account how the composition of the population changes over time. Because what it basically is all household disposable income deflated by inflation and then divided by the total population. But obviously, a large proportion of the population are children. And children, and when I say children, I'm referring to people under working age, so under the age of 15. They're very unlikely to have an income. And if they do have an income, it's likely to be relatively minimal. So as as the proportion of the population held by children declines, the level of real household disposable income should rise because you're replacing children who don't have an income with an adult who does have an income. So what I did to sort of try and get through this demographic distortion is not divide total real household disposable income by the entire population, but solely by the working age population, which is defined as people aged 15 and over. And what that reveals is that between the middle of 2012 and the latest data, households have basically gone nowhere once you have adjusted for this particular distortion, which is, I think, really quite striking because we are told that the current economic strategy is successful, that, high migration is our special sauce, yet in the post-mining boom era, with the exception of the distortions created by the pandemic, which were temporary, we haven't actually seen the strong, robust growth that you would associate with economic success.
No, and the other point, of course, is that's an average of all adults, right? But the distribution is the other thing, and that earlier cartoon slide with the K shape highlights the other point that, in fact, if you look carefully, there are some household groups who've done extremely well and whose incomes are actually a lot stronger, adjusted for inflation, than they were. But around 2/3 of households are on the other side of the equation. So, in other words, the average is low, but actually for those in that second cohort I discussed, they've actually gone way backwards. And there's a strong correlation between, for example, those in the rental sector and income pressure, or those with the mortgage problem and household affordability problems and their incomes. So the story that you've never had it so good, et cetera, or whatever you want to put on the table as some way of the politicians spinning that we're doing well, belays the true facts. When you actually think about it and look at the data, no, we've gone backwards for many people. In real terms, gone nowhere, and costs of everything, of course, have gone up a lot.
Exactly, and I think the thing is that this is not the only factor that is driving, real household disposable income where it should be getting pushed higher. So, for example, since that point in 2012, which I've used as the point of departure here, in the middle of 2012. I've done a counterfactual, right? And what this has basically done is, over time, there have been a greater and greater proportion of Australians of working age who have been in the labour force and, in particular, working. So what that dotted line there represents is what real household disposable income per working age adult would have looked like if the only thing acting on it was just the fact that there was a higher proportion of people of working age who were employed. So really, we are lagging fairly significantly where we should be, just based on the fact that there are more Australians in the workforce today as a proportion of the population than there was those 13 years ago. It's also worth noting that that isn't the only factor either. There are other factors which should be pushing up this metric. For example, on average, the population is slightly older. The average person is slightly further into their career, which means they should, at the average, be earning a higher level of real household disposable income, but at the average, they're not. There's also the fact that there is a cohort of retirees who have passed away who have generally been much less affluent than the current crop of retirees that are feeding through into the system, which should also be pushing up real household disposable income per capita, but isn't. So there's all these factors of people who should be getting ahead but aren't. But as you say, there's also the granular side of things where there are people who are very much getting ahead while a whole lot of other people are, in real terms, falling behind.